It should have been a night of celebration. Rangers through to the next round of Champions League qualifiers, getting the job done away from home in Greece with a 1-1 draw. That's the kind of result that usually brings a sense of progress, of mission accomplished. But anyone who watched that 90 minutes in Athens knows that underneath the surface, there's a much bigger conversation to be had. Yes, Rangers are through. Yes, the team advances with a 3-1 aggregate. But no, that performance was not convincing. It wasn't even close to the standard this club should be aiming for. What we saw on the pitch wasn't just underwhelming, it was flat out concerning. And if not for a few moments of individual brilliance, especially from Jack Butland and the ever-reliable JD Gassama, things could have gone very differently. Let's not sugarcoat it. Rangers were second best for large spells of that game. They lacked tempo, intensity, aggression. Everything you'd expect from a team chasing Champions League football. The build-up was painfully slow, the transitions were sluggish, and the spark that's supposed to come from the flanks non-existent. Watching it unfold, you couldn't help but wonder, is this really the identity Russell Martin is trying to build? Now, it's fair to point out that we're still early in the season. There's still a bedding period going on, new ideas being implemented, a new style of play being adopted. But here's the thing. 8 out of the starting 11 players in that match were already at the club last season. That's not a brand new squad. That's not 11 strangers learning each other's names. So the excuse of Gelen as a unit only goes so far. There has to be more, especially from a group that already knows what it means to wear this badge. Defensively, it was a mess. Let's start with Jack Butland because quite honestly, without him, this tie could have slipped away. He pulled off some top saves, kept the team alive when everything around him was shaky. And still somehow, he gets stick from a section of the support. Some claim he could have done better on the goal conceded, but really what more can the man do? He's being asked to clean up chaos in front of him, and time again he delivers. And speaking of chaos, the back four. Max Aarons was played out of position again, shoved onto the left side, where he clearly doesn't belong. He's a natural right back, and a very good one at that, but you wouldn't know it by the way he's being used. The decision to persist with Tavernier on the right while misusing Aarons on the opposite flank is baffling, and Tav, usually a leader and attacking outlet, looked miles off it. Called out for the Panathinaikos goal, constantly exposed in transition, and offering little going forward. It was arguably one of his worst games in a Rangers shirt. Some player ratings even dropped him below a 3 out of 10. Harsh maybe, but not unearned. Then there's John Sautar, once again deployed on the left side of central defense despite being right-footed, and once again exposed. It's a pattern that's been repeated, and still the coaching staff insists on forcing him into a role that clearly doesn't suit him. He looked uncomfortable all night, his distribution was hesitant, and his positioning was suspect. We've seen this movie before, and it rarely ends well. Now to the midfield, where things were a bit more stable but still not convincing. Joe Rothwell showed flashes, controlled the tempo and parts tried to dictate play. But there were also moments where he looked too relaxed, too casual. Gave the ball away needlessly and drifted out of the match at key times. Raskin on the other hand was more energetic. He made a driving run to set up the Gassama goal, and at least he looked like he wanted to make things happen. He wasn't outstanding, but he wasn't hiding either. And on a night like that, that alone earns some credit. Up front, it was a mixed bag. Finley Curtis struggled to get into the game, tried to make things happen, yes, but lacked the composure and sharpness needed at this level. Dano Link, though, was more positive. He had a couple of shots that forced saves linked up reasonably well and played a key role in the move that led to the equalizer. He gets a lot of criticism from fans, some of it deserved. But against Panathinaikos, he put in a shift and made things happen when he could. He's still working his way back to full sharpness, but you can see the intent. And then there's Dow. What is Russell Martin seeing that the rest of us aren't? Because from the moment the lineup dropped, most fans already knew what was coming. Dow played 74 minutes, and in all honesty, it was like playing with 10 men. No goals, no assists, no shots, 1 yellow card. That's the entire contribution. He doesn't beat defenders, he doesn't put in crosses of any quality, and he doesn't track back. You'd be hard-pressed to find a more anonymous winger in European competition this week. He was rated 2.8 by SofaScore, and even that might be generous. How he lasted over an hour is anyone's guess. Compare that to JD Gassama, who once again came off the bench and changed the game. He's dynamic, direct, and knows where the goal is. Took his chance superbly and injected life into a team that looked dead on his feet. If he doesn't start against Motherwell this weekend, serious questions need to be asked. There's no justification for keeping a game changer like him on the bench while Dow jogs around aimlessly on the wing. Some of the other subs, Hef Bassi, came on and did their job without fuss. And yes, even Dez's got minutes. And once again, he reminded everyone why he's the most frustrating player at the club. Gets in behind clean through 1-on-1 with the keeper and misses. Not for the first time, and sadly not likely the last. How can you trust a striker who fluffs his lines that often? Sure, he works hard, sure he runs, but at this level, that's the minimum. You need end product, you need reliability, and right now, DISGRACE doesn't offer that. He's like Fashion Sakala all over again. Bags of energy, works hard, fans want to love him, but when it matters most, you can't count on him. And if this club wants to make it into the Champions League proper, they need someone up top who puts those chances away. That's why even after this result, the message has to be clear. Rangers still need reinforcements. A left back, a centre back, and a striker minimum. Players who can step in and raise the level immediately. Because relying on what we saw in Athens, that's not going to be enough. And look, there's a silver lining. Qualification means at least Europa League group stage is guaranteed. Financially, that's huge. But no one at this club should be aiming for Europa League by default. The goal is the Champions League. That's where the money is. That's where the prestige is. And with Victoria Pleasant coming up next, the path is still open. They're a good side, no doubt, but they're beatable. This isn't Benfica, this isn't Fenerbahce, this isn't Feyenoord. It's a tie Rangers can win if they show up properly. But they won't win it playing like they did against Panathinaikos. They won't win it with fullbacks out of position, with strikers missing sitters, or with a midfield that disappears. For large chunks of the match, the margin for error is getting smaller and the stakes are only going to rise from here. The first leg is scheduled for the 5th of August at Ebrox. The return a week later in the Czech Republic. Between now and then, the club needs to look at this squad honestly. No delusions, no spin. There's quality here, yes, but there are also glaring weaknesses. And if they're not addressed quickly, the dream of Champions League football could vanish in 90 painful minutes. So yes, celebrate the result. Enjoy the fact that the team is through, but don't ignore the warning signs. Because if this team wants to go further, it needs to do a lot more than just scrape by. And if we're being totally honest, there's no way Russell Martin and his staff watched that performance back and thought, yeah, we're in a good place. Not a chance. Because what we saw in Athens was not a team on the rise. It was a team teetering on the edge, doing just enough to get by. And let's not kid ourselves, just enough might scrape you through a qualifier, but it won't take you where you want to be. Not in Europe, not in the Champions League, not with the quality of opposition that's waiting down the road. You look at the shape, the structure, the way Rangers tried to press, or rather the way they didn't press, and it's alarming. Panathinaikos weren't doing anything revolutionary. They just moved the ball quicker with more conviction and played like a side that believed they could cause damage. Rangers, on the other hand, looked hesitant, like a team trying not to lose rather than trying to win. That's not a mentality that wins you games at this level. That's not the kind of energy that belongs in the Champions League. And the problem isn't just about individuals being off the pace. It's systemic. It's tactical. The fullbacks don't seem to know when to bomb forward or when to sit. The midfield gets bypassed too easily. The front line is too static, too disconnected. There's no real pattern of play, no understanding of how to break down an opponent that sits deep. You could see it in the number of times the center backs ended up lumping it long, hoping for a flick on or a mistake. That's not football. That's desperation. JD Gassama's side, there was no spark, no imagination, no aggression. And that's the real concern. Because you can't coach hard. You can't teach desire. And when the team needed someone to grab the game by the scruff of the neck, too many players went missing. Too many played it safe. And that's not what this club is built on. This is Rangers. You're expected to take control. You're expected to dominate, not just survive. There's also the growing issue of confidence in key positions. The fact that Max Aarons is being asked to do a job completely out of his comfort zone is baffling. And what message does that send? It tells your squad that you're willing to sacrifice balance just to keep certain names on the pitch. It tells your opponents exactly where to target. Aarons is not a left back, and pretending he can be one is not only unfair to him, it's unfair to the team. Then there's the Tavernier debate. And look, this is delicate because James Tavernier has given a lot to this club. He's been a leader, a goal scorer, a consistent presence for years. But we've got to be real, form is temporary, yes. But some of these habits are becoming long-term. Defensively, he's being exposed more and more. And when his attacking contributions dry up, what are we left with? A player caught in between roles, doing neither particularly well. If the manager wants to build something long-term, he's got to be willing to make big decisions. And that might mean making tough calls on players who've been central to the squad for years. The midfield, it's crying out for someone to take responsibility. Rothwell at times looks like he's coasting through games. Neat on the ball, yes, but neat doesn't win you Champions League ties. We need steel, we need bite. Raskin offers some of that, but he's not a miracle worker. He needs support. And if the balance isn't there, it's always going to look like we're running in sand trying to build attacks through treacle. Up front, the problems are even more glaring. Let's talk about Dan O'Link for a second. He's a player who, when he gets involved, can make a difference. But too often he's isolated, chasing shadows, dropping deep to touch the ball because nobody's feeding him. Then there's DISGRACE. What can you even say anymore? He runs, he presses, he moves into space. But when the moment comes, when you need composure, killer instinct, that natural strikers touch, it just isn't there. You can't keep throwing him out there hoping this is the night it clicks. He's had those chances, and the cost of missed sitters at this level is enormous. One miss can cost you the season. And let's not forget Dow, 74 minutes of nothing. Nothing. A passenger in a European qualifier. And this isn't even about scapegoating, it's about accountability. How do you justify giving him that many minutes when there are players like Gassama waiting to come on and actually do something? You can't talk about high standards and then keep picking guys who don't perform. You just can't. It undermines everything you're trying to build. And here's where it gets serious. Because in less than a week, Rangers play Victoria Plausen, a solid, disciplined team that will punish any slackness. They're not world beaters, but they're no mugs either. They'll come to Ibrox looking to keep it tight for straight and pick their moments. If Rangers play like they did in Athens, they'll lose. Simple as that. And once you fall behind and these ties, climbing back becomes a mountain. But there's still time. Time to reset. Time to make smart decisions. Gassama has to start. No debate. Butler, no question. Raskin, automatic. But then you've got to start being ruthless. If someone isn't delivering, drop them. If a player's not suited to a position, don't force it. Build a system that plays to the strengths of the squad, not one that ticks boxes or tries to please everyone. This is the moment where the manager earns his paycheck. This is where he proves he's got more than just ideas. He's got vision and guts. The transfer window is still open. There's still a chance to fix this, but the club has to act. Not just talk about wanting to be competitive in Europe, actually show it. Go get a proper left back. Go get a striker who finishes his dinner. Go get a center back who can pass the ball and defend crosses. This isn't about panic. It's about ambition. It's about recognizing that qualifying for the Champions League doesn't happen by accident. It happens because you build a squad capable of meeting that level. And fans, they'll back this team to the hilt. They'll fill Ibrox. They'll roar them on. But they're not fools. They can see when something's not right. They can see when certain players are being protected, when the manager's loyalty is hurting the collective. They'll support, absolutely, but they also demand accountability, and rightly so, because Rangers can't afford to stand still. Not with the money on the line, not with the reputation at stake, not when there are clubs across Europe building fast, getting smarter, and doing what it takes to get into the elite. The Rangers name still carries weight, still has pull. But that only lasts so long if you don't back it up with performances. What happens over the next few weeks will define this season. Not just in terms of European football, but in the tone. It sets for the domestic campaign. Come through this next tie and you're looking at Champions League group stage. You're looking at millions in revenue elite level opposition and the platform to attract better players. Fail and it's Europa League again. And while there's no shame in that, let's be honest, it's not where we want to be. Not where this club should be. So yes, celebrate the result. Be happy the team progressed, but don't pretend everything is rosy, because it's not. and pretending otherwise only delays the improvements that are desperately needed. This was a wake-up call. Now it's up to the club to respond. Before we continue, make sure to subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications to get all the exclusive news about Rangers FC. Don't overlook any details about your beloved team. It's crucial for Rangers FC fans. Whispers are growing louder at Ibrox, and they center around none other than longtime captain James Tavernier. Known for his attacking prowess and dead ball precision, Tavernier has long been hailed as one of Rangers' key players, but a recent outburst from a former Rangers defender may have tipped the scales against him. The ex-player, whose name hasn't been publicly confirmed but who is believed to still have ties to the club, reportedly called Tavernier a defensive disgrace in a heated post-match radio appearance. The remark, though not yet officially addressed by Tavernier or the club, has opened the floodgates for internal rumblings. Behind closed doors, sources suggest that not all teammates remain convinced of their captain's leadership, particularly in high-stakes matches where his defensive lapses have been increasingly difficult to ignore, while no player is immune. To criticism, the intensity of this particular wave is beginning to raise eyebrows around Scottish football. Questions are now being asked about whether the captaincy remains secure or whether a quiet search for a new dressing room leader may already be underway. Though no official move has been made, the mood at Rangers appears to be shifting, quietly, cautiously, and maybe permanently away from the man who once stood as its unchallenged figurehead. Internally, it is said that several senior figures within the squad have begun to distance themselves from Tavernier, not out of open disrespect, but due to a growing lack of belief in his ability to rally the group during critical moments. While his attacking statistics remain strong, with goals and assists consistently placing him among the top performers in the league, some within the club question whether those numbers come at too high a defensive cost. There's a feeling that Tavernier's forward surges leave gaps that opposing teams are increasingly exploiting, and for a team with Champions League ambitions, such vulnerabilities can no longer be brushed aside. A well-placed insider hinted that younger players in particular feel left exposed and unsupported, relying more on coaching interventions than on-field guidance from their captain. Training sessions reportedly remain professional, but there is an undercurrent of tension, with eyes quietly shifting toward other natural leaders in the squad. This subtle withdrawal of backing does not yet equate to mutiny, but it does suggest that Tavernier's once unquestioned authority may be eroding. For a club that prides itself on unity and purpose, even a whisper of disconnection can grow into something much more consequential. This situation is further complicated by the fact that Tavernier has no shortage of admirers outside the club, particularly in England, where clubs have previously shown interest in his services. While there's no suggestion yet that he's being pushed toward the exit, the notion that a summer move could solve the internal discomfort has gained quiet traction. Some around the club see this as an ideal time for both sides to part ways amicably. Tavernier could seek a fresh start, and Rangers could begin shaping a defensive line less reliant on an offensively minded right-back. Importantly, these discussions remain highly speculative and entirely unofficial. But in football, smoke rarely rises without fire. The club's management has thus far remained silent, fueling more speculation rather than quelling it. Until someone at the top issues a strong endorsement or denial, the whispers will continue to gather weight. If this scenario plays out over the coming months, it may not be due to any singular outburst or performance, but rather the gradual accumulation of doubts. A slow, quiet shift that ends one chapter and begins another. Supporters, meanwhile, are split. Many remain loyal to Tavernier for his years of service, highlighting memorable goals, captaincy during title-winning seasons, and unwavering commitment. Yet others echo the growing concern, citing recent performances as proof that his influence is waning and perhaps even detrimental to the team's defensive balance. Fan forums have become battlegrounds of opinion, with some calling for patience while others demand change. The phrase defensive liability has crept into commentary with increasing regularity, and even pundits once considered allies have grown more critical. All this feeds into the bubbling narrative that something is not quite right in the Rangers camp. If perception is reality in football, as it so often is, then Tavernier's image as a dependable leader may be under more threat than ever before. What's most telling is the silence from the club's hierarchy. No statement of support, no denial of internal fractures. In the world of professional sport, silence can be deafening. It suggests either indifference or deliberation, and neither bodes well for a player under fire. Ultimately, whether James Tavernier remains captain, stays at the club, or eventually exits in the coming transfer windows may depend not on one dramatic event, but on the quiet consensus building in the background. Dressing rooms are delicate ecosystems, and once belief in a leader begins to fade, it is remarkably difficult to recover. As the season progresses, every mistake, every loss, and every missed tackle will be scrutinized through this lens. The question is no longer just about Tavernier's skill or statistics, but about trust, influence, and direction. Is he still the man to lead Rangers through its next chapter? Or has the dressing room already made up its mind, leaving only the formalities to be sorted? For now, it remains a rumor, nothing confirmed, everything speculative. But in football, rumors often have a way of becoming reality. And at Ibrox, the murmurs around James Tavernier aren't going away. If anything, they're growing louder. Greetings, fans! Make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel, as it's greatly appreciated by Rangers FC. And don't forget to share your thoughts on the news in the comment section below. Until the next video, stay tuned.